Welcome back to the Explainer, Focus Learners. Today, we're diving straight into a reality that is fascinating, sometimes a little alarming, and goes way beyond a simple genetic mix and match. We are talking about real-life hybrid animals. So get ready, because we're going to look at the actual science behind creatures you probably thought only existed in sci-fi movies.
So let's just address the elephant in the room right off the bat. Remember Napoleon Dynamite? I know we all laughed when he was drawing those mythical creatures in his notebook, but the joke's kind of on us. Ligers are very, very real. They aren't just doodles, they are artificially created beasts that actually exist right now in zoos and animal sanctuaries.
Here is our roadmap for today. Number 1, nature's unlikely encounters. 2, engineered for agriculture. 3, science experiments gone wild. And 4, the hybrid dilemma.
To make sense of all this, we can organize these complex genetic overlaps into 3 distinct origins: natural, like the growler bear; agricultural, like the beefalo; and lab-created, like spider goats. We're going to use this exact framework to walk through the 15 bizarre hybrids from our source material today.
All right, let's jump into Section 1, Nature's Unlikely Counters. Take the growler bear, for example, which actually has a pretty tragic origin story. It's a mix of grizzly and polar bear genes, and the first confirmed case was discovered up in the Canadian Arctic back in 2006. So why exactly is this happening? Well, in a word, climate change. Shrinking habitats are literally forcing polar bears south, right into grizzly territory. So this isn't some crazy lab experiment, it's a direct result of a changing environment forcing 2 massive apex predators together.
Let's move to our next natural hybrid, and I want you to really wrap your head around this number, 66. This belongs to the wholphin, which is an incredibly rare cross between a female bottlenose dolphin and a male false killer whale. That number 66, it represents the razor-sharp pearly whites flashing in its smile. First seen in captivity at the Tokyo SeaWorld in 1981 and later in Hawaii, the wholphin is a completely wild hybrid that does in fact exist in nature, even though sightings are extremely few and far between.
Moving right along to Section 2, engineered for agriculture.
You know, humanity has actually been meddling with genetics for centuries. Just look at the beefalo. Way back in 1749 in the American South, male cows and female bison accidentally bred. But by the mid-1800s, settlers realized what they had and started actively breeding them to get more milk and to help the cattle survive harsh winters. They basically created a super cow. Jump ahead to the modern day, and the booming meat industry uses science to produce beefalo that yield much leaner meat with far less fat and cholesterol than your average cattle. It's a really fascinating journey from a happy accident to a highly calculated industrial staple.
Now this next pairing answers a really interesting genetic question. We all know the mule, right? A male donkey crossed with a female horse, which gives us that traditional larger pack animal. But consider the inverse pair, the hinny. That's a female donkey and a male horse. The hinny is much smaller in stature, though it still has those incredibly tough, strong legs. Why the drastic physical difference? Well, it all comes down to the dominant traits of the mother. Because the hinny's mother is the smaller donkey, her traits completely dictate the physical size of the hybrid. It's a perfect example of how genetics just plays favorites.
Sticking with agricultural necessities, let's meet the Tzo. This is what you get when you mix a yak with a domestic cow. It's an incredible success story created by everyday farmers in Mongolia and Tibet out of pure necessity. They needed a massive, strong beast of burden that could also serve as a local meat delicacy, and they got exactly that. It's the absolute best of both worlds. But there's a pretty huge catch here. While the females can reproduce, all male Tzos are completely infertile. So it's basically a genetic one-time deal.
Okay, things are about to get a bit crazy in Section 3, Science Experiments Gone Wild.
I'd bet good money you didn't know this one. Killer bees are actually a human-made hybrid. Yep, created in a lab in Brazil in the 1950s, scientists crossed typical honeybees with African bees. The goal was super simple: let's increase world honey production. But man, did that plan fail dramatically. These bees broke loose from their controlled environment, escaped the lab entirely, and formed these massive, fast swarms that are defined by their fiercely aggressive will to defend their colonies at literally all costs.
Okay, let's dive into this next one because it sounds straight out of a comic book. Spider goats. Seriously, researchers at the University of Utah have successfully spliced goats with golden orb spider DNA,
Why on earth would they do that? Well, so these goats can produce milk that contains incredibly strong spider silk. That silk is then extracted from the milk and used to make high-strength materials like parachutes, fishing lines, and even body armor. It is an absolutely mind-blowing intersection of mammalian milk production and spider silk strength.
And this next one brilliantly illustrates just how wild biology can get, even down on a microscopic level. It's called gene transfer. The emerald green sea slug is a baffling, singular instance of a complex organism successfully stealing DNA from its food. It literally eats algae and then incorporates the plant's genetic material directly into its own DNA so it can perform photosynthesis itself. It's using the sun to create its own nutrients. It's practically a plant-animal hybrid doing everything everywhere all at once.
Which brings us to our final section, the hybrid dilemma.
Take the liger and the tigon. They sound absolutely gorgeous on paper, right? Combining the best traits of each apex predator. But the reality is actually quite tragic. Tigons are often completely sterile, and they're born of highly solitary parents who would never naturally cross paths in the wild. And ligers? They suffer from some pretty severe, unnatural physical burdens.
To truly grasp that burden, just think about this massive number, 1,200. That's 1,200 pounds. Because of a bout of gigantism, ligers grow to be significantly larger than either of their parents, and it is simply way too much weight for their failing hearts and organs to support. Sadly, most of them died at a very young age. They would absolutely never be accepted in the wild, resulting in a pretty sad existence created purely for captivity in zoos and sanctuaries.
The reproductive dead ends continue with the geep. This is a rare mix of a sheep and a goat, first recorded in Botswana in 2000. And sure, it is incredibly cute, rocking a sheep's legs and a goat's body. But these pairings are intensely plagued by stillbirths, and the rare few that do actually survive, totally infertile. So the idea of an entire hybrid flock of geep happily running through a meadow, it's really just a pipe dream, because these genetic overlaps are, for the most part, reproductive dead ends.
All of this really brings to mind an idea borrowed from pop culture, but it's incredibly relevant to the spider goats and the ligers. With great power comes great responsibility. Humanity has absolutely proven that we have the capability to act as genetic architects.
So does human interference in genetics go a little too far? Just because we have the power to conjure up these fascinating, beautiful, and sometimes downright scary animals out of thin air, does it mean we actually should? I want you to really chew on that balance between scientific wonder and the reality of these animals' lives. Thanks for joining me on this explainer today, Focus Learners, and I'll catch you next time.